Funding for this program is provided by Deco Art of Stanford, Kentucky, manufacturers of liquid acrylic paints.
Hello there. Thank you for joining me. We have a soft, peaceful, quiet landscape for you today. Just using just an array of beautiful colors. It almost looks like a rainbow in the sky. You're just going to love it. Let's go right onto the palette and get started. First, let's put out 3 puddles of white. 2, 1 puddle we're going to add cadmium yellow. The next we're going to add Boysenberry. And to the next, the largest puddle, we're going to add dark forest green. I think I'll put out a little more white and cover the water. We're going to have a little span of water, so I'll catch it at the same time. Dark forest green. It's just a beautiful green, has a little bit of a blue cast to it. Just in case it's not quite blue enough to suit me once I get it on the canvas, I'll put out a little bitty tad of true blue. I might use it, I might not. It just depends on how I feel when I get there. Okay, this time let's spray our paints. Keep them wet and keep them workable. And since this is a landscape, we're going to take a little shortcut and spray the entire canvas this time. If your paint tends to be running, if your water tends to be running, that tells you that you've got a little too much. You just want to moisten it. So just blot it a little bit. Now let's start in the horizon area with the white, a touch of the cad yellow. Okay, in the horizon, this is the area right through here. Going to have some background trees right here, but I'm pulling into the outline of those trees purposely. I do not want any unpainted canvas showing once I finish this painting. Dry the brush. Well, you can wash it or you can just dry it. It doesn't matter. White and Boysenberry this time. W&B. Right over the yellow. Now, you notice that I am keeping these edges ragged. I'm not making a straight line across the sky. I am coming down into the yellow a little bit and making these edges ragged also. Straight lines are awfully hard to overcome. And the sky, a soft landscape is just not pretty with harsh, hard lines across the sky unless it is, what you want a western look. Okay, white, black forest green. This almost looks like viridian green. It is a beautiful color. Okie dokie. Fill in the rest of the canvas, the entire top of the canvas now. The remaining area, I think I am going to put just a touch of blue in that. Borrow a little bit of white from here. Here we go. Yeah, that gave me the blue cast that I wanted for this particular little feet. And now I'm using the fan brush strictly because it's handy. You wouldn't have to, but I would use a large brush and laying your sky in. There's no point in piddling around with a little bitty brush when you can cover some territory pretty hurriedly with the larger one. This is a little span of water right across here and a little waterfall that's going to come across it later. So I'm going to go ahead and underpaint it right now. Because it's going to be the very same color of the sky. It'll be a little bit darker by the time we finish it, though. Going to have some pretty little old ducks in this water, just swimming all over the place. And brush your strokes out just a little bit. Horizontal strokes for what? Water, because you want it to lay flat. I'm going to pick up a cleaner brush now. Go back to the palette, because I want clean white this time. And all these others have little tints in them already. Tints of color. And I want to lay some clouds in. This is white with a little tint of yellow. But see, the yellow that I was using here in the horizon is just too bright for this. Okay, you want to blend your cloud downward in sort of crisscross strokes. Crisscross or diagonal, it's the same thing. Okay, now this pink, this Boysenberry seems to be a little bit too bright to suit me. So I'm going to cut it in value, in intensity, not value, intensity. Just a little bit. Because we want a soft, peaceful day. All right, now I'm going to take the horizon mixture and tip the top of these clouds just a little bit. Brighten them up just a tad. Not the entire cloud now, just the top. Well, I wish you'd just have a look at that. Aren't those colors just working together beautifully? Okay, now thin the paint here, because I have some trees that are going on both sides, and I want the sky painted in this area just in case you can see through the foliage a little bit. You wouldn't have white canvas showing there. We have a nice little cabin right here, and it's nestled in some real pretty little trees back in there. For that, I'm going to use True Blue, Ebony Black, to establish those. And I'm using a soft brush. This is a Bristle. Nope. Take it back. It is a synthetic Sable. Soft. Okay, we have two. This is going to be a soft one in value. By that I mean you want it to look like you can see way back in the distance here. So you want your tree to be sort of muted. You wouldn't want a real bright tree way back here. I use the black to take the brightness out of the blue and to take it down in value a little bit too. You're working with two things, intensity and value, when you're working with color. Okay, now I'm adding the Boysenberry to the same mixture to get a little bit of a variation. Keep it from looking too samey. And I'm stippling. When you stipple, you kind of pat with the bristles, the blades of the brush. Okay, I'm going to skip over to this side and put some of this same color over here. This is background for some green trees that we're going to add later. Coming right along here. Keep those edges soft. Let's add a little more up in here, just in case the green trees let us peek through the foliage just a little bit. These colors are so pretty. I always hate to put the dark colors over them, but you just have to. You have no choice. Okay, now this one still looks a little bit too dark. Not suiting me. So what I'm going to do is just take a dry brush and pat it down into this wet sky just a little bit. And push it back into the distance. Okay, now let's change greens. Let's go to midnight green this time. It doesn't have the blue cast to it. And dark chocolate. Midnight green and dark chocolate. Okay, now I mix with my brush too. I put the, dip the brush into each puddle of paint 2 or 3 times before I start applying it to the canvas. And that gives me sort of a different look too, a look of variety in the foliage rather than, symmetrical, samey, too two-y, too fixed, too drawn, too plotted, too planned. I always want to strive everything to be a little bit off balance. Try to avoid symmetrical and too many repeats of the shapes. Okay, let's work right on across here now. All of this area down to here is going to be filled in with these 2 colors down to the pond. And just work right on down, then let's establish some little trees back in here. One thing that's so much fun about working with liquid acrylics is a lot of your mixing is done for you. And if you're new to acrylic painting, you know what a hassle that can be. Or if you're an oil painter changing over to acrylic, you also got another hassle on your hands because you're having to overcome a lot of things you're not quite used to. And a lot of this is already done for you. Makes your work so much easier. I just love it. I like it and I love it. Okay, now this is going to be our waterfall here. Let's go ahead and paint our bank underneath it. Darken that little span of water there just a little. Bring this bank down. It would have to hold that water, wouldn't it? Now, for your new acrylic painters, I'll give you a few little tips. Or, like I said, anybody that's changing from oil to acrylics. Just keep your acrylics wet to keep them workable. Work in a small area at a time rather than doing like you do with oil, doing your entire underpainting and then going back and doing your highlights and things. I kind of, just like I did when I started, just wet the canvas a little bit. But you don't have to work so fast. So many people are just afraid of acrylics, and I've heard them say, no, they dry too fast for me. No, I can't use them. That's the beauty part of it to me. Just don't work your whole canvas like you would in an oil painting. What I'm saying is finish your sky while it's wet, then move on down and work in this area while it's wet, then move on down and work in this area while it's wet. If it dries out on you, all you have to do is just pull another color over those edges, and what are you doing? You're working wet on wet again. Just say if this area would dry completely down in here, but it isn't. You can see that, but if it was, all I would do is mix up this color of the water and pull it back up over the edge again. And what would I be doing? Working wet on wet again. So you can really enjoy it like I have. I love it. Like it and I love it. That one looks kind of chopped off, doesn't it? Let's take it on up a little higher. And now I'm using a bristle brush for this stippling. A synthetic Sable would do. You wouldn't have to use a bristle. It was just handy. Okie dokie. I'm going to add some reflections, and I'm going to go to a fan brush for that. Simply because it'll save me some time. And time is of the essence. I bet that scared you to death, messing up that pretty light colored water. I know my students, when they get to that, their water's so pretty and it's just so flat looking, but they think it's just wonderful and great. And then when we put the reflections in, they say, I don't want to do that. I just don't want to do it. I'll mess it up. Okay, let's fill in the cabin. Let's use, let's get some Georgia clay. It's such a pretty color. Georgia clay and white. Little bit of burn-in, but it takes some of the brightness out of it. Now for that I'm using a crooker. See the little twisted brush? It really does great wonders. Okay, this is decision time. Our light is coming from the left, so we are going to have to darken this side. This is a little shed that's built onto the side, so it's going to have to be darkened. Okay, let's add white. Let's add white to that now. And put the roof on. Looks pink, doesn't it? I'm going to put a little bit more dark chocolate in that. I'm going to try to stay out of your way too. Okay, there goes the shed. Here comes your overhang. I bet we need a door and some shadows. Let's put the shadows in first. Let's put the doorway in. Let's put the doorway in. Let's put the doorway in. Okay, then you want to soften your shadows. And let's start laying some highlights in there. Let's use Boysenberry and Antique Gold. They make such a beautiful highlight. And I'm going to mix with a fan brush. And let's come right across here with the highlight. Let's dip right down here with one. And then let's dry a paper towel and do some blending. You're going to have to leave a shadow now between, this is a double bank here, one here and one there. You have to leave that little shadow between the two. Or, you know what'll happen, it'll disappear. You look like you have one bank. Let's pull the water across this fall now. Then let's go to another brush and put some bubbles at the bottom of it. How about some highlights in the water? Yellow and white. Okay, now let's go to, oh, all of these brushes are so dirty. The Boysenberry and the yellow again. Start laying some highlights and pretty colors in here. Flowers, making some light areas to dress it up a little. What about some cattails? I am dying to put those ducks in, but that water's a little bit too wet. Oh, Norma, don't chance it. Don't chance it. So I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll pull some weeds up down in here and push all of our push our painting middle ground back into the distance. This is the forest green, midnight green, and dark chocolate. And if it's too dry, if it's too wet and I can't get them dark enough, I pick up a little white. You got it, ebony black. Let's put a few little weeds over in here. Up for weeds, down for reflections. Okay, now let's try those cattails. Oh, look at that. Isn't that pretty? I love these colors. I just love them. Love them so. Let's skip over to this side and add a few. And we'll use all of the colors that we've used in the painting for these weeds, even the blue. Now this is what I love about acrylics. That bothered me, so out it goes. And if it had been dried, I could have just painted over it, so I wouldn't have had to wait for it to, I wouldn't have had the problems that you do with oils. And believe me, I have had problems with every medium I've ever worked with. Okay, there are blue ones. Let's have a few yellow. Now, I want to get those little babies in here. Dry or not, the time has come. Clean white paint. Got everything it needs but a head. And I'm going to go to a smaller brush for the head. What else do they need? Tell me now. Reflections. Now what do they need? Water lines to separate them from the water. Oh, just float on past there, you sweet little old thing. Let's add a few water lines over in here so that this definitely shows that this is kind of a marshy look back in here, that is actually water. Here's the end of the bank right there. And that's waters over in there. Okay, I don't think it would hurt to pull a few weeds right over that. And that tends to push your highlight back into the distance. Those babies are having a ball, aren't they? Okay, let's get the control medium and add a little highlight now, a little bit of color to the water. That just sort of stretches your paint a little bit. Look at that. Isn't that pretty? You know it is. Destroyed my baby's head. Well, that won't work. Let's put it back on. Poor little baby. Poor little baby. Little darling, you're back in business. I need to tighten this up just a tad right here on that roof line. And this is sort of, this area in here sort of needs to be pushed a little bit. So what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to use the yellow ochre and the white that we started with and sort of soften that down just a little bit. It's a little bit too busy right through there. And that's a little bit too bright. I'm just going to kind of blot it with a paper towel. Now, see how that pushed that back in the background? Yes, you do. Then I can just lay it right back in there. This time very softly, though. All kind of tricks. This is it for today. I certainly have enjoyed being with you. See you next time. Bye-bye.